Okay, so in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at ordering fractions. And the method we're going to use to order these fractions is to find equivalent fractions to the fractions we've already been given that share a common denominator. This method is extremely useful on non-calculator papers, because if we could use a calculator, we could just type these in and convert them to a decimal, and then use the decimals to order them. So for this first question, we have our three fractions, and we want to find equivalent fractions for them all that share a common denominator. And the way we find what that denominator is by looking for the lowest common multiple of the denominators in our fractions. So we want to look for the lowest common multiple of 4, 3, and 6. So if we think of our multiples of 4, 3, and 6, the lowest common multiple would actually be 12. So we want to find equivalent fractions for all of these that are over 12. So now we're going to go to each individual fraction. So how did we get from 4 to 12? Well, we simply multiplied by 3. So to keep these fractions equivalent, because I've multiplied the bottom by 3, I also need to do that to the top. So I'd have 3 multiplied by 3, which is 9. So we've got 3/4 is equivalent to 9/12. The next fraction, how did we get from 3 to 12? Well, we multiplied the bottom by 4, which means we also need to do that to the top. So we'd have 2 multiplied by 4, which would give us 8. And then finally, how did we get from 6 to 12? Well, we multiplied that by 2. So because I've multiplied the bottom by 2, I also need to do that to the top. So we'd have 5 times 2, which is 10. So we've got 3 equivalent fractions now. And because they're all over 12, they're a lot easier to order. So we need to order these from smallest to largest. So our smallest fraction of the ones we've just converted would be 8/12. So that would be the first one, but we need to make sure we use the fraction that we were given in the question. So the smallest fraction would actually be 2/3. Again, going from smallest to largest. The next one would be 9/12. So that's the next one on our list, but we need to make sure that we use the original fraction we were given. So the next one would be 3/4. And then finally, we're left with our 10/12 as our last fraction. So we just, again, use the fraction we were given in the original question, which was 5/6. So these fractions in order from smallest to largest would be 2/3, 3/4, and 5/6. Okay, for this next question, we want to order these fractions from smallest to largest again. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the denominators, and we want the lowest common multiple of all of them. Well, the lowest common multiple of all of these fractions would actually be 30. So then we need to find the equivalent fraction from the fraction above. So for this first fraction, we had 19/30. That's going to stay as 19/30 because that hasn't changed on the bottom. The next fraction, looking at the bottom, what have we done to get 30? Well, we've got 6. We'd have multiplied that by 5. So we've got to also do that to the top. So we'd have 5 multiplied by 5, which gives us 25. Moving on, how did we get from 3 to 30? Well, we must have multiplied that by 10. So we're going to do that to the top also. So multiplying 2 by 10 gives us 20. For the next fraction, the 15, we must have multiplied that by 2, which means we're going to do exactly the same to the top. That's going to give us 11 times 2, which is 22. And then finally, with this 5, we must have multiplied that by 6, which means we're going to do exactly the same to the top. So if we do 3 multiplied by 6, that gives us 18. So we now have our 5 fractions with the same denominator. So we just use the numerator now to order them. So the smallest one on our list here would actually be 18/30. So again, we use the fraction that we were given originally. So the smallest one would be 3/5. Okay, the next fraction would be 19/30. So again, using the fraction we were given, that would be 19/30 again. Okay, moving on, the next one would be 20/30. So we use the fraction we were given, which was 2/3. The next one would be 22/30. So again, using the fraction we were given, we have 11/15. And then finally, we're left with our 25/30, which was equivalent to the one above, which was 5/6. So those would be our fractions ordered from smallest to largest. Okay, and for this last question, we're ordering from smallest to largest again. So we want equivalent fractions for all these fractions that we were given with a common denominator. So looking at all those denominators, we want the lowest common multiple of all of those numbers. Well, the lowest common multiple of all of these would actually be 40. So then we need to find these equivalent fractions. So to get to 40, we must have done 20 multiplied by 2, which means we do the same to the top. So 11 times 2 gives us 22. To get from 8 to 40, we must have multiplied by 5, which means we do exactly the same to the top. So 5 multiplied by 5 gives us 25. To get from 4 to 40, we must have multiplied by 10. So multiplying the top by 10, 3 times 10 gives us 30. To get from 5 to 40, we must have multiplied by 8. So doing that to the top, 3 times 8 gives us 24. And then finally, to get from 10 to 40, we must have multiplied by 4, which means we do exactly the same to the top. So 7 times 4 gives us 28. So now ordering from smallest to largest, using the ones we've just converted, the smallest would be 22 over 40. So we're going to use our original fraction here, which would be 11 over 20. The next smallest would be 24 over 40. So using our original fraction, we have 3 over 5 next. Moving on, the next smallest would be 25 over 40. So using our original fraction, we have 5/8. The next one would be 28 over 40, with our original fraction being 7/10. And then our final fraction, our biggest fraction, would be 30 over 40, where our original fraction was 3/4. So those would be our final fractions ordered from smallest to largest. So well done if you followed along with those questions, and that's it for this video. If you want to check out any other relevant videos to this one, then I've left some links for them down in the description, and I've also put a card in the top corner, so feel free to check them out. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please feel free to leave a like and consider subscribing. If there are any topics you'd like me to go through next, then please just let me know down in the comments, and I'll try to make some videos on those topics as soon as possible. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.